Hi, my name is Ryan Levesque, creator of the Ask Method Masterclass, and I'd like to welcome you to this free Ask Method workshop. The Ask Method phenomenon is revolutionizing the way entrepreneurs everywhere are launching and growing their businesses online. The secret to succeeding in business today is actually the same as it was 100 years ago. Find out what people want and give it to them. Now, 100 years ago, that was simple, but today it is not. Because in a connected world where people have more and more choices, when people arrive at your website, they expect the product or service you sell to be exactly what it is that they're looking for, to feel almost as if it were specifically designed for them. But the secret is not about customizing the products or services that you sell. Instead, the secret is about perceived customization. This is what the Ask Method is all about. It's about taking people who land on your website and putting them into different groups, or buckets as we call them, so you can communicate with each of these different groups in a more targeted way. It all starts with figuring out what buckets exist in your market, identifying which buckets you should focus on, which ones you should selectively ignore, and how to communicate with each of your buckets differently. It's about understanding your market at a deep emotional level so you can better sell and better serve. And if you're in the early stages of your business right now, or you don't have much of an email list and you're just beginning to sell online, I know what that can feel like. Where do you start? What do you do next? At times it can feel overwhelming, and I can completely relate. There tends to be a lot of guessing when we're at this stage of our business. What to sell, how to sell it. This is why you're arguably in the best position to be using the Ask Method right now. The Ask Method is all about asking your market the right questions to figure out exactly what they want to buy and exactly how to sell it to them. It's about identifying the key buckets of people to focus on before you finalize your products and create all your web pages. When you're in the early stages of your business, this gives you a huge advantage and massive confidence in what it is that you're building, because you're no longer guessing what your customers want. You know exactly what they want. In this workshop, we're going to cover what the Ask Method is and how to use it based on where you are right now in your business. You'll see how world-class companies like Apple, Tesla, and Lego are using the same strategy as we speak. We'll cover the major shift that's happening right now online that makes it the best time in history to be using the Ask Method. You'll also discover 3 words that you can type into Google to figure out what buckets exist in your market or any market you might be curious about right now, today. And the best part? As you'll discover, the Ask Method isn't just for big companies. What I'm about to share with you is something that you can use whether you're just getting started online and you don't really have an email list, if you serve a small number of clients in a deep way and want to get more leads online, or if you're like some of my students and you're already running a 6, 7, or even 8-figure company and want to scale further on cold traffic like Facebook or Google. And if you do marketing for others, or this is something that you've considered, you'll even see how you can earn tens of thousands of dollars implementing the Ask Method for clients as a service. In this workshop, I'm going to give you a behind-the-scenes look at real people like you and me and how they're using the Ask Method to launch and grow their businesses right now as we speak.
It seems so simple. It's ask people what they want before you give it to them, and yet, how do you do that? I think that intuitively we all know that we should do that, but what Ryan does is he lays out exactly how to do that, and how to do that in a way that makes your results a little bit more predictable.
This has given me an entire mindset shift, because what it's done is created a new framework for how to look at best reaching our ideal customers and better serving our ideal customers.
There's this open communication. There's no friction between me and the marketplace.
You know, not only has it been a business success in terms of the X's and O's and the revenue, but it's really helped us scale our company.
In the first 5 months of the year, I surpassed my 2014 number.
That has changed the way I do business forever. It's that important to me.
And the Ask Method is not just theory either. I've used this exact step-by-step method myself to take my first real online business from $0 to $25,000 a month in 18 months, and today earn a multi-million-dollar income working from home. I've used this exact method in markets ranging from Scrabble tile jewelry to Orchid care, to golf instruction, dog training, and weight loss, to even teaching people how to improve their memory and much, much more. In fact, since 2008, when I quit my last real job, I've used the method that you're about to discover to enter 23 different markets, generate over 4 million email subscribers, over 200,000 customers, and over $100 million in sales. And more importantly, it's a method I've now shared with thousands of students around the world who are using it themselves in their businesses right now today. In this workshop, you'll meet a few of these students, like Jamal, who used the Ask method to generate 10,000 leads online in just 10 days at 15 cents per lead, launching a new 6-figure business in the process. And Ryan, who generated 20,000 leads, 1,100 customers, and $26,000 in revenue in his first 5 weeks. Now, Ryan is on pace to do over $1 million in his first year using the Ask method. And Marina, who used the Ask method to launch a new business while working full-time, making $11,000 in her first month, enough to quit her job and pursue her dream of owning her own business. Now, I've got 4 videos to walk you through in this workshop so you can see how these entrepreneurs are all doing it. And in today's video, the first video in this workshop, we've got a lot of ground to cover, and I don't want you to miss any of it. So it's important that you watch this entire video now and pay close attention. In fact, there's also a PDF on this page that you can download to help you take good notes. Are you ready to get started? Let's dive right in. There's a major shift that's happening right now in the way people are buying online, and the companies recognizing this shift and acting on this shift, both big and small, are becoming the most successful and most profitable companies in the world. Let me explain. Take a look at Apple, for example. If you're looking for a new computer and you go to Apple's website, when you scroll down, you notice that you have a few choices. You've got Mac for education, Mac for business, and free in-store workshops. You see, Apple has recognized that there are a few groups of people, or buckets, in the market that they serve, and they've designed their entire website to put people into one of these 3 buckets so they can tailor the buying experience. There are students, professionals, and beginners. And when you click on any of these choices, Apple drills down a level further. In education, you have college students, school administrators, and high school students. In business, you have enterprise options, portable options, options for creatives. Now, on the surface, it might seem that the secret to Apple's success has been focusing on expanding their product mix. But in reality, within the education, business, and beginner buckets, Apple actually sells the same exact products to all 3 groups. They just talk about these products differently. This is perceived customization. This is bucketing in action. And this is where the Ask method begins. You see, Apple has figured out their most important groups of customers. And when it comes to selling to those customers online, they've learned to highlight different features, promote different benefits, change their messaging and the language they use ever so slightly, even though they're selling virtually the same products to all 3 groups. And in 2012, when Apple became the most valuable company in the world, they explained that this strategy was one of the single biggest keys to their success. And the more you look around at your favorite companies, the more you'll start to see this too. You'll start to see buckets everywhere. Let's take a look at another example, Tesla. This is how Tesla defines their buckets in their own words. Bucket number 1, people, predominantly men, who want exhilarating, unparalleled performance. Bucket number 2, people, predominantly women, who want ample seating along with the fastest and most capable vehicle. And lastly, bucket number 3, people, men and women, who want affordable, real-world range. Tesla is speaking to 3 very different customers. Tesla has 3 different buckets. And today, Tesla has become the fastest growing car company in the world. Now, sometimes buckets are less obvious and not what you might expect. Take Lego, for instance. Ever since I was a boy, I have been a huge fan of Lego. And as a dad, it doesn't get much better than playing Lego on the floor with my 2 boys. Now, Lego recently discovered 2 of their most passionate buckets couldn't be more different from one another. Kids who play the video game Minecraft, and grown-ups who are fans of architecture. So Lego took essentially the same product, the Lego brick, and repositioned it differently to 2 very different groups of people. And Lego has done this with each of the key buckets they discovered within their market, one by one. And by following this strategy over the past decade, in 2014, Lego became the #1 largest toy company in the world. But here's the thing. You don't have to look to Apple, Tesla, or Lego to see this trend in action. This is happening everywhere you look. In fact, as you begin looking around, you'll begin to see buckets everywhere. Students of the Ask method have now used this approach to launch and grow businesses in literally thousands of different markets. And over the past decade, I've personally used this strategy myself to successfully launch and grow businesses in 23 different markets, generating over $100 million in sales in the process. But here's the thing, I don't want to scare you off with all those markets and big numbers, because that's not how things started for me. In fact, it's hard for me to imagine a more humble start. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was 2008, in the middle of the world financial crisis. I was actually living in China, working for the insurance company AIG. I walked into the office that morning, picked up the Wall Street Journal, and the headline read, AIG to file for bankruptcy. That's how I found out that my company was about to go out of business. Now, for a few years, I'd been dreaming about starting my own company, but I was just too afraid to jump. And when I saw that Wall Street Journal headline, it was the kick in the pants that I needed. I was 26 years old, newly married, and getting ready to start a family with my wife, Tylene. That very same day, before losing my courage, I walked into my boss's office, turned in my resignation letter, and decided to make the leap. With no income, only a little bit of money saved up, I'd never been more afraid in my life. Growing up, my family was solidly working class. My dad worked nights as a shipping clerk, and my mom cut people's hair in the basement of our house to earn extra money. I was the first person in my family ever to go to college. So when I got into Brown, an Ivy League school, my parents were incredibly proud. At Brown, I studied neuroscience and Chinese. Now, I wasn't ever the smartest kid, but I knew how to work hard. And when I told my parents that I was quitting my job to sell ebooks online, let's just say they were disappointed. They thought I was throwing away my education, that I was making a terrible mistake. But what they didn't understand was how lost and lonely I felt. Like my life was just passing me by and slipping through my fingers. Maybe you can relate. It felt like the clock was ticking away and time was running out. I had this fire inside of me growing up with big dreams of what my life could be like someday. But as I'd gotten older, that fire had all but gone out, and those dreams had all but disappeared. It felt like if I didn't do something now, that fire would be gone for good. So I did the only thing I knew how to do and decided to get to work. Now, I wish I could tell you that the first business that I started was successful, but it wasn't. The first business I started was in China, and it failed. My wife and I ran out of savings, and we had to go back to the US with our tail between our legs. In our late 20s, we basically started over again and almost moved in with Tylene's parents, but we decided to make a go of it on our own. So we moved to Brownsville, Texas, less than a mile away from the Mexican border, where we didn't know anybody, where nobody knew us, and most importantly, where the cost of living was cheap. With nothing but a mattress on the floor, 2 lawn chairs in our living room, and a shaky internet connection, we decided together to take our shot at the American dream. The first market where I made any money at all was the Scrabble tile jewelry market, literally teaching people how to make jewelry using Scrabble tiles. Yes, it's a thing. It's a funny story, actually. Tylene came to me one day and she said, there's this new website. It's like eBay for handmade products. It's called Etsy.com. And there's this type of jewelry that's selling like crazy on the website. It involves combining Scrabble tiles with origami paper. And there's even someone on Etsy selling an ebook tutorial on how to make the jewelry. And she's selling like 20 copies every single day at $17 each, which adds up to like $9,000 a month. Tylene bought the tutorial and she didn't think it was very good. She said, I think there's an opportunity here. Now, I was skeptical. This was probably the last market in the world that I would have chosen for myself. But nothing I had tried had worked so far, and I was committed to making something work. So I decided to give it a shot. We created a tutorial that was better than the competition, launched it on Etsy, and promptly sold 3 copies in the first month. Weeks went by and our sales didn't get much better, but we had built a tiny little list of about 100 people who had signed up to get our free tips. So out of desperation, I emailed that little list and asked people why they didn't buy. What I discovered from that little survey, almost by accident, was crazy. We thought that there was one market or bucket that we were serving, women who want to make Scrabble tile jewelry. But there were actually 4 different groups of women who were very different. There were women who wanted to make jewelry with origami paper and Scrabble tiles. There were women who wanted to make jewelry with Scrabble tiles and photographs. There were women who wanted to make jewelry with origami paper and glass tiles. And there were women who had purchased all the supplies to make everything, but wanted to know what other crafts they could create with everything that they had lying around. So instead of offering a single tutorial, we created 4 different products, and then we sold them together as a bundle. Business exploded. We started a website. We sold print copies of the tutorials on eBay. We expanded to sites like youcanmakethis.com and Dawanda. We took that business from 3 sales in that first month to making over $8,000 a month. But as soon as we started getting traction, something happened. Factories in China started selling Scrabble jewelry for super cheap. The market became saturated. Stay-at-home moms on Etsy who made the jewelry by hand couldn't compete, and people stopped buying tutorials to make it. Eventually, people lost interest in Scrabble tile jewelry and stopped buying it altogether. The market completely collapsed, and we were back to square one. But the small success I had putting people into different buckets opened my eyes and eventually led me to the work of Dr. Glenn Livingston, someone who went on to become one of my most important mentors in business. You see, Dr. Glenn was a marketing psychologist who left academia and later the corporate world to launch a dozen tiny little niche online businesses in markets like guinea pig care, pygmy goats, radon detection, Sudoku, and even body language. Each one was small, but together they added up to something like $30,000 a month in revenue. And he was able to profitably enter every new market he tried and limit his upfront risk to just a few $100s each time by figuring out what buckets exist in each market and then targeting each of those buckets in a slightly different way. I was intrigued. I decided for my next business I'd go into a market with zero chance of being a fad. I knew from my research that one of the oldest, longest-lasting hobbies in America was gardening. So I decided to find a niche to focus on within the gardening market and settled on orchid care. I got the idea because when we lived in China, we bought a bunch of orchids and they all died. I thought that if we had trouble, there were probably other people who had the same struggles. The market had all the right signs. People were searching for orchid care help on Google. There were books on orchid care on Amazon. So I decided to create a little website and send Google AdWords traffic straight to the best-selling orchid care ebook on ClickBank. I sold exactly 0 copies. I couldn't understand what I was doing wrong. I was frustrated. And at this point, I was completely burnt out and almost ready to throw in the towel. But I went back to the drawing board one last time. When I chose the orchid care market, I figured it was a small enough, specific enough niche. But what I found, once again, was an almost exact repeat of the Scrabble tile market. I didn't have 1 bucket, I actually had 4. There were people who wanted to get their orchid to bloom again after it stopped flowering. People who wanted to save their sick or dying orchid. People who needed help potting or transplanting their orchids. And people who just bought their first orchid and needed to know the basics. And that's when I realized niching down is not enough. No matter how big or small your market is, you have to diagnose and prescribe to give people exactly what they want and need. What I mean by that is, just like a doctor, you need to ask for enough information before you can offer someone the right prescription. You need to identify what bucket someone falls into before you can give them the right advice or explain how your product can help. It made perfect sense. We do this naturally face-to-face, but almost nobody does this online. So I tried a little experiment. I began approaching each of the 4 buckets in the orchid care niche in a slightly different way. I asked people when they opted into my email list what their main interest was, and based on what they told me, I redirected them to different sales letters and sent them different email autoresponders. The result? I took that business from 0 to $25,000 a month in 18 months. Finally, it was the breakthrough I needed. And the best part? Once I set everything up, I didn't have to work that hard. People subscribed to our email list every single day. Sales kept coming in while we slept, and everything worked on autopilot. But I was worried it was just a fluke, and I was scared that the same thing that happened in the Scrabble market was going to happen again. So I decided to diversify into another market and use the same approach. This time I chose memory improvement to leverage my neuroscience background from Brown. We ended up launching a business called Rocket Memory, and it was an even bigger success. In fact, in the next 3 years, we 10x'd our income following the same process. And by the way, I didn't have a list or even experience in any of the markets that I entered. We started from scratch just like everybody does at some point. So don't worry if you don't have a list or even a product right now. That's exactly where I was when I got started. And the crazy thing is, despite all that success, there was still one more layer to the Ask method I hadn't yet discovered, which took our income to an entirely new level. But before I get into that, I want to pause for a moment and ask you a question. What would happen if you were able to 10x your income in just 3 years from now? If you were literally making 10 times as much money as you're making right now, how would that change your life? What kind of freedom would that give you? What type of impact would you be able to make? the legacy you'd be able to leave. We were able to move out of that small apartment, start a family, build our dream house, travel, invest, contribute to causes around the world that we believe in, and live a life I certainly never thought possible just a few short years ago. Imagine the life you'd be able to create. And imagine having the freedom and time to enjoy it, not sometime in the distant future, but starting right now. Now, a few minutes ago, I mentioned that there was one more layer to the ask method, and this was the missing piece that brought things all together. You see, while this was all happening, I saw another trend happening online. The New York Times came out with a regional dialect quiz to tell you what part of the country you came from based on how you speak. Over 116,000 people per month take that quiz online. Dr. Oz came out with the Real Age Test, a quiz to determine what your body's real age is compared to your calendar age. Over 40 million people have taken that quiz since its inception. What I discovered was the viral appeal of using quizzes to generate leads and build your list. And the data supported it. BuzzFeed, which generates over 170 million unique visitors to their website each month, published a study of the 3-word phrases that generated the most traffic. The number 1 phrase, character are you. In other words, those what character are you quizzes. What Lion King character are you? What Harry Potter character are you? What Star Wars character are you? Now take a closer look at that infographic. The gray bar represents the range. In other words, the best performing example of each 3-word phrase and the worst performing example. If you notice, the gray bar on the second best 3-word phrase, X things only, is very wide, meaning there were some big winners, but there are also some total losers in there as well. But take a look at character are you. The gray bar is very narrow. Every single one was a home run. In other words, for BuzzFeed, character are you is something that works every single time. Now, I don't know about you, but I like something that works every single time. So I started testing using online quizzes and assessments as a way of putting people into different buckets, and then tailoring my marketing based on a person's outcome of their quiz or assessment. The results I started seeing reached a whole new level. Using the ask method, I developed a quiz in the golf market that as many as 10,000 people take daily. For now, it's become the #1 golf instruction site online. That quiz generates as much as 450 new customers every single day. In the weight loss market, using the ask method, I developed an assessment for one of the biggest weight loss brands in the country that now as much as 23,000 people take daily. That assessment generates as much as 1,200 new customers per day. And after having similar success in markets like dog training, tennis instruction, and alkaline health, and B2B markets like business funding, companies like Dish Network, the #2 satellite TV company in the United States, Agora Inc., the $900 million direct response powerhouse, and even Guthy Ranker, the billion-dollar company behind the proactive skincare line, started reaching out, asking me to implement the ask method in their business. All in all, I entered 23 different markets, generating over $100 million in sales in the process. And the ask method as it exists today was born. But for now, I don't want you to be intimidated by those big numbers, because it wasn't too long ago that I made $370 in my first month in the Orchid business. In fact, I still have that little Orchid business, and the passive income I generate from that business still pays our mortgage today. Now today, the ask method is everywhere. It's been featured in Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, on television, and was even rated by Forbes as one of the top 10 business trends of the year. And you're now seeing some of the greatest thought leaders in our industry using the ask method to put people into different buckets to better sell and better serve. With multi-million-dollar product launches and campaigns from thought leaders like Todd Herman, Stu McLaren, Jeff Walker, and dozens and dozens and dozens more, all using the ask method. In short, buckets represent the future of online marketing, and in many ways, the future is already here. Because it's not just thought leaders and experts who are now using the ask method, it's also regular people you've probably never heard of in all sorts of obscure markets and corners of the world. Like Jamal Miller from Chicago, who with his wife Natasha helps young couples build lasting marriages through their website, marriedandyoung.com. After Natasha became pregnant, the business was struggling to generate leads online. It was days before their baby was born when Jamal discovered the ask method. With their baby on the way, Jamal enrolled in the Ask Method Masterclass. And within 10 days after graduating, he had generated 10,000 new leads for his website at less than 15 cents per lead. Today, Jamal and Natasha are attracting national media attention with their success. And now, with a membership site and live events, their business is growing beyond their wildest dreams. And entrepreneurs like Ryan McKenzie from Vancouver, a husband and father who runs a small media company, along with an outdoor adventure magazine called Explore. Ryan had been struggling for months to make money with Facebook ads online and had all but given up. But he came across the Ask Method, enrolled in the Ask Method Masterclass, and in just 5 weeks after graduating, he generated 20,000 new leads on Facebook, resulting in over 1,100 new customers and $26,000 in magazine subscriptions. Today, with the Ask Method, his business is on pace to do over $1 million a year. Or Marina Kogler from Austria, who was still working a full-time job when she discovered the Ask Method. For years, Marina dreamed of launching her own business and pursuing her passion of helping healers in Austria and Switzerland. Marina had tried many different strategies to launch her business to no avail. But within weeks of graduating from the masterclass, Marina applied the Ask Method to launch her new business and made $11,000 in her first month. She was able to quit her job and is now able to pursue her passion and her new business full-time. So the question is, what is the Ask Method and how does it work exactly? Well, at the highest level, the Ask Method is broken down into 3 major steps: discover, segment, launch. And it all starts with discovering what buckets exist in your market, figuring out what buckets to focus on, which ones you should ignore, and discovering the unique needs, wants, and desires of each of these buckets, and the unique language patterns they use to describe their pain, so you know exactly what you should sell and how to sell it, before investing time and effort into creating products and building out your marketing funnel or website. It comes down to asking the right people the right questions in the right way to figure all this out. And there's a step-by-step process to do this, which is covered in detail in the Ask Method Masterclass. But it involves using a specific combination of surveys and analyzing the data using a bit of math and spreadsheets. And I don't want to overwhelm you too much in this video right now today. But in the meantime, there's a neat little trick that you can use on Google. And you can do this right now actually, to get a sense for what the top 4 buckets might be in your market, or any market that you might be curious about for that matter. Here's how it works. Let's say that you sell backpacks and you want to know what buckets exist in the backpack market. Simply type in best backpack for and let Google fill in the rest. Take a look at what Google's autofill feature tells us. It tells us that the top 4 buckets in this market are travel, college, work, and flying. Now let's go one level deeper and choose one of these sub-markets. Let's say that you specialize in selling travel backpacks specifically. When we type in best travel backpack for, we see this time the top 4 buckets are flying, business, moms, and laptop. Let's take a look at a couple more. What about something like socks? You've got men, running, hiking, and even a specific pain point, cold feet. Interesting. How about shampoo? You've got colored hair, oily hair, men, and dandruff. What about a service and something a little bit more niche, like the top 4 buckets in the meal delivery service market? You've got families, singles, weight loss, and seniors. You can start to get a glimpse for how you can use this to discover what the top 4 buckets are in any market you might be curious about. And this is a great first step to take right now to get you started. But I will warn you, Google is dynamic, meaning the results can change seasonally and based on your location. And if you're logged into your Google account, your search history will impact the results that you see. And this trick doesn't work in every market. If you really want to identify the most important buckets to focus on in your market, what to sell to those buckets, and how to communicate with those buckets, there's a more nuanced process that you want to follow. We'll be talking more about this process in video 2 of this workshop, because in video number 2, we're going to be talking about the 4 ways to put people into different buckets, the ideal number of buckets you want to have. And then after you've identified what bucket someone falls into, we're going to cover the number 1 most important thing that you want to customize on your website based on a person's bucket. And if you're the type of person who loves to see examples, you're going to love this next video, because we're going to go through a few examples of real businesses who are using the Ask Method, plus an Ask Method case study that generates over $3 million a year. By the way, don't worry if the how-to part of anything we've covered so far sounds complicated. It's actually really easy to do. And in video 3, I'll explain exactly how to set everything up step by step, including the tools and software that makes it all super easy. But for now, my question for you is this. In this video, video number 1, what's your single biggest takeaway? And based on everything that we've covered so far, what are you most excited about? Leave a comment below the video to let me know. And if you can think of someone else in your life who would benefit from this video, I'd love for you to just click the like button and share this video with your friends. So, whether you're looking to launch your first business or take your current business to the next level, take a deep breath, because I'm in your corner now, and you and I are gonna do this together. You ready? All right, go ahead and scroll down to leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video.